All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, man. Before I start on this video, I just want to say, believe what you want to believe. There's a lot of stuff going around of, people believe what happened. A lot of people think what happened was staged. Whatever you want to believe, you have the right to believe that. I know a gentleman did lose his life. I think some other people were shot. All I can say is, from the videos I've seen, from everything going on, it does seem extremely fishy. How, I ain't saying it was fake, but I'm just like, man, how did they not see that dude and all those people seen him? I know everything be happening so fast, but man, like people were pointing out the dude up there, and I think we all can agree that it was pretty fishy. Like, I ain't saying what happened didn't happen. I'm just saying the stuff around it seemed fishy. So we got this video here from the Grunge channel, which I'll leave in the description. It said, every U.S. president who survived an assassination attempt. Ain't gonna waste no more time. Let's jump right into it.
Misfiring guns, an attacker who called himself Jesus, and a president who kept talking despite a bullet wound. From Andrew Jackson to Donald Trump, here are all the presidents who have survived assassination attempts. Back in the early 19th century, a U.S. president had never been seriously threatened by one of his own constituents. That all changed on one fateful day in 1835, when a homeless house painter named Richard Lawrence pulled the trigger on President Andrew Jackson at a congressional funeral. The gun misfired, saving Jackson's life. However, Jackson was understandably enraged about the whole thing, so he proceeded to beat Lawrence with his walking cane. Lawrence then misfired again, and before he could fire a third time, he was swiftly taken down by the president's aides. Even when the dust settled, the incident lingered in the back of Jackson's mind, and the president became increasingly concerned that Lawrence had been sent by a political rival. This seems like a reasonable suspicion, considering Jackson was stirring up a lot of controversy at the time, but Lawrence probably had no connection to Jackson's enemies. Abraham Lincoln's murder at Ford's Theater at the close of the Civil War was one of the most tragic moments in United States history. However, that wasn't the first attempt on Lincoln's life. In 1860, the election of a known abolitionist to the White House was a source of massive controversy, causing tensions between the northern and southern states to reach a fever pitch. President-elect Lincoln was due to assume the presidency in early 1861, and after a touching farewell to his home state of Illinois, he hopped on a train to Washington, with a scheduled stopover in Baltimore. What Lincoln didn't realize was that in Baltimore, a man named Cipriano Ferradini was planning to murder him. Luckily, the terrorist plot was sussed out by police detective Alan Pinkerton, who warned the Lincoln family. Lincoln wanted to stop in Baltimore anyway, but his wife convinced him to skip it, leading to the Lincoln family hiding out in Washington's Willard Hotel until Lincoln was finally inaugurated on March 4th. William Howard Taft wasn't the most famous president in history, but he was the first U.S. president to meet with a Mexican president, then a former general named Porfirio Diaz. Considering the not-so-pleasant history between both nations, this was a pretty big deal. The celebrated USA-Mexico crossover in El Paso, Texas was accompanied by lots of glitz and bombast, including a parade with 2,000 U.S. Army soldiers and more than 2,000 Mexican troops. Despite the presence of the military, some guy wielding a pencil pistol broke through the crowd and tried to murder both presidents at once. The would-be assassin was taken down before he could do anything, but he managed to get within a few feet of his targets. Even though Teddy Roosevelt successfully completed 2 terms by 1909, the politician ran for a 3rd term in 1912 and gave a big campaign speech in Milwaukee. As Roosevelt stood up before the crowd, a barkeep named John Schrank shot a bullet at Roosevelt's heart. Insanely enough, the speeding bullet smacked right into the bundled papers of Teddy's speech, which he'd stuffed in his breast pocket earlier, as well as his glasses case. The bullet still—
Man, that literally sounds like a movie. People be like, they got something in metal or just something in their pocket, and the killer thought they got away with it. Man,
still lodged in Teddy's chest, but the speech paper's glasses case combo had significantly slowed down the bullet's momentum. So what did Teddy do? Roosevelt just continued giving his speech as if totally unfazed by getting a bullet in the chest. He even ripped the bloodied papers out of his pocket, held them before the crowd, and announced, "You see, it takes more than one bullet to kill a bull moose."
Wow.
After the speech was done, Roosevelt rushed to the hospital for treatment and recovered, while Schrank spent the rest of his life in a mental hospital.
I do not care a rap for being shot. It is a trade risk.
From the start of his presidency, Herbert Hoover was at risk of being assassinated, and before the month was out, someone did try to murder the new president-elect. Later in November, Hoover set off on a goodwill tour of Latin America, hoping to spread a message of peace to our southern neighbors. But not everyone felt so peaceful. A man named Severino di Giovanni and his allies felt the president-elect's visit was a perfect opportunity to get revenge on the United States. Once di Giovanni deduced that Hoover was going to ride a train from Chile to Argentina, he arranged to have explosives planted on the railroad tracks. The plot was discovered, and the bombers were all arrested before anything could be put into motion. As for Hoover, he appeared remarkably undisturbed by the whole hullabaloo. President Franklin Roosevelt faced many unprecedented challenges.
Like I said, man, to do that job, knowing that somebody's trying to take you out almost every step you take, the amount, forget the amount, like, you got to think about this. The amount of trust people have to having you to lead the country, but then the amount of trust you got to have in people around you. Like, that's what I was saying about the whole Trump situation. Like, when people broke down those videos, I was like, man, that, like, the one lady who couldn't even get her gun back in a holster, to like the one shot, or you see the lady kind of like behind him, kind of like ducking, taking cover, and when she was supposed to be like on top of him too.
As if both the Great Depression and World War II weren't enough, he also suffered from polio that left him paralyzed from the waist down. Throughout all of this, FDR's policies, courage, and stability have led to him often being celebrated as one of the most important U.S. presidents in history. But it all could have ended tragically on one day in 1933. Down in Miami, the new president-elect was giving a speech to a massive crowd. Amid the record flock of 25,000 observers, slunked an unemployed man named Giuseppe Zangara, who just purchased an $8 pistol. According to later reports, Zangara said he had no problem with FDR personally, but claimed he hated, quote, all officials and anyone who is rich. As soon as Zangara had a clear shot, he screamed out, quote, too many people are starving, and fired 6 rounds at the president-elect. A bystander intervened and he missed FDR.
I knew he was shooting at the president, so I taken my right arm and pushed the pistol up just as hard as I could.
Wow.
His bullets went through 5 other people, including visiting Chicago Mayor Anton Cermak, who died from his wounds. The crowd swiftly took down Zangara and might have killed him if a calm and composed FDR hadn't told them to let the authorities handle the assassin. FDR went on to devote his presidency to ending the Great Depression. Attempts on the president's life became increasingly common in the latter half of the 20th century, and Harry Truman had to deal with 2 tries. The first came knocking on his door in 1947, when a Zionist group called the Stern Gang sent multiple letter bombs to the president rigged to explode when the envelopes were opened. Before any fatalities could occur, the White House mailroom snagged the letters and had the bombs defused by the Secret Service. Only a few years later, Truman faced another murder attempt. At the time, the White House was being renovated, so Truman and his family were living around the corner in the Blair House. The 2 would-be assassins, Rogelio Torresola and Oscar Colazzo, marched right up to the front door and started firing their guns. Predictably, neither of them got very far. Torresola was mortally wounded in the conflict, and Colazzo was sentenced to death, though in 1952, Truman arranged to have his near-killer's sentence changed to life imprisonment. The shocking death of John F. Kennedy in 1963 was one of the most traumatic events ever to hit the collective American psyche. While JFK was the last U.S. president to be murdered while in office, he certainly wasn't the last one to face an assassination attempt. It was only a decade later that a former tire salesman named Samuel Bike tried to kill President Richard Nixon. Bike had previously protested outside the White House wearing a Santa Claus costume, and his grand plan was to hijack a commercial airliner and then force the pilots to crash it headfirst into the White House, hopefully killing Nixon. Bike's terrorist attack didn't make it too far. Before the plane could even take off, he was shot up by police and then took his own life. As for Nixon himself, he resigned later that year due to the infamous Watergate scandal.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
2 assassination attempts would be scary enough, but Gerald Ford faced both of his in the same month. The first occurred in Sacramento on September 5th. Lynette "Squeaky" Fromey, a Charles Manson follower, was desperate to prevent what she perceived as an environmental threat to the California redwoods, and believed that she had to shoot Ford to make a statement. Fromey claimed to have gotten cold feet as soon as she saw Ford in person, but still raised the gun. The Secret Service rapidly restrained her before anything could happen, and Fromey was sentenced to life in prison.
They're not gonna let me go.
A few weeks later, Ford was in San Francisco when a former FBI informant named Sarah Jane Moore attempted to shoot him. Moore's attempt was stopped by a nearby Vietnam veteran, Oliver Sipple, who managed to throw off her aim. Secret Service agents hurled Ford into a vehicle before Moore could hit him. She was sentenced to the same West Virginia prison as Fromm, though both were later transferred to more secure facilities. In 1979, President Jimmy Carter was giving a Cinco de Mayo speech in Los Angeles, and he had no idea that hidden in the crowd was an unemployed drifter named Raymond Lee Harvey. Harvey was wielding a gun, but before the perpetrator could shoot, his suspicious demeanor caught the attention of Secret Service members who arrested him on the
What do y'all think? 'Cause I remember Obama did that speech when he had Beyonce performing, and he had that, like, I forgot how tall it was, but that tall glass protecting him. Like, do y'all think, like, maybe they should stop talking outside or do the glass thing? Because it's like, again, with that situation, that just seemed so crazy. Like, when they showed the stage and where on the roof, like, I was just wondering why Secret Service wasn't on that roof. They should have been on all the roofs. You know what I mean? On all of the nearby roofs they should have been on. That's why it seems extremely fishy to me. I'm like, how could y'all not be over there? It's crazy, man. I'm just wondering, when is the next time Biden is going to speak outside? And how is that going to go? You know?
spot. Though Harvey was the one who got caught, it turned out he wasn't alone. According to Time, Harvey told the authorities that he was supposed to be one part of a four-man operation to kill Carter. Supposedly, Harvey's role was simply to shoot loudly enough to cause a distraction, while his partner finished the job with a sniper rifle. Charges against Raymond Lee Harvey were later dismissed due to lack of evidence. In 1976, a man named John Hinckley Jr. watched the film Taxi Driver and became dangerously fixated on actress Jodie Foster, who was 12 when she starred in the movie. Hinckley wrote letters to Foster, traveled to Connecticut in an attempt to see her, and even tried to call her on the phone.
So you just don't ever want to get home?
No.
His obsession took an even darker turn when he decided that he wanted to kill the President of the United States for her. In 1980, Hinckley attempted to trail President Jimmy Carter, but was arrested for carrying his guns near a Carter campaign stop. Undeterred, Hinckley bought more guns. His obsession climaxed in 1981 when he tracked the new president, Ronald Reagan, to the Hilton Hotel in Washington. Hinckley unloaded a barrage of exploding bullets at Reagan. Though they didn't explode properly, one bullet pierced Reagan's chest, and others wounded a Secret Service agent, a police officer, and Press Secretary James Brady. Reagan survived the shooting. The courts determined that Hinckley was insane and sentenced him to a mental hospital where he remained until his release in 2016. The original president, George H.W. Bush, made it through his 4 years without facing an assassination attempt, but that all changed after he retired. In April 1993, just 3 months after finishing his term, Bush took a trip to Kuwait. Soon afterwards, 17 suspects were arrested on charges of attempting to assassinate the former president with a car bomb. Further investigation by the FBI determined that the suspects had not been acting alone, but were part of a covert operation directed by the Iraqi intelligence service. Seeing as Bush wasn't the president anymore, the official U.S. response came from the new president, Bill Clinton, who wasn't too happy about the incident. To make a point, Clinton decided to launch 23 cruise missiles at the Iraqi intelligence service headquarters in Baghdad. The missiles were specifically fired between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. to prevent the death of innocent civilians, though Iraqi officials later stated that 3 houses had been destroyed, 3 people killed, and 4 injured. During his time in office, Bill Clinton made it through a few assassination attempts. The first incident occurred in September 1994, when a truck driver named Frank Eugene Corder attempted to pilot a small plane right into Clinton's White House bedroom, but instead crashed into one of Andrew Jackson's old magnolia trees.
Well, it's kind of a dramatic way to do things.
Clinton also survived an eerie encounter in 1996. That year, Clinton was visiting Manila, and Osama bin Laden ordered his operatives to plant a bomb beneath a bridge that the presidential motorcade was scheduled to drive over. Just in time, Secret Service agents picked up a message regarding the bomb and rerouted Clinton's path to avoid it. Though bin Laden's involvement in the plot was soon uncovered, U.S. officials opted to keep quiet on the matter until many years later. In May 2005, President George W. Bush stood beside Georgian President Mikhail Saakashvili on a stage in the city of Tbilisi, Georgia. Bush was giving a speech when suddenly a grenade came flying toward him from the audience, but it didn't explode. As explained by the FBI, the grenade was live, but the attacker had wrapped it up so tightly in a red handkerchief that the firing pin wasn't able to deploy properly. The attacker escaped, but was tracked down a few months later and found to be a local Tbilisi man named Vladimir Aratunian. The would-be assassin was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Being the first black president of the United States, Barack Obama received more death threats than most public figures. However, there were 3 specific assassination attempts that made headlines. The first one occurred in 2009, when President Obama attended the Alliance of Civilization Summit in Istanbul. A Syrian man was arrested for carrying fake press credentials, and the man confessed that he had been planning to stab Obama with a knife. Things got a lot weirder in 2011, when a young man named Oscar Ortega Hernandez attacked the White House with an assault rifle. Ortega Hernandez described himself as the modern-day Jesus Christ and believed it was his holy mission to kill Obama, whom he deemed the Antichrist. He was later sentenced to 25 years in prison.
I am the modern-day Jesus Christ that you all have been waiting for.
The strangest story happened in 2013, when typewritten letters were sent to Obama containing a suspicious substance. The substance was soon found to be ricin, a deadly poison. An Elvis impersonator named Paul Kevin Curtis was arrested and charged, but was found innocent. Charges instead fell upon Curtis's online rival, James Dutchka, whom Curtis said had framed him. The bizarre story ended with Dutchka being sentenced to 25 years in prison. During his 2017 to 2021 presidential term and his 3rd presidential campaign in 2024, Donald Trump faced 4 assassination attempts. When the president paid a visit to the Andeavor Mandan refinery in North Dakota in September 2017, Gregory Lee Langang gained access to a secure area and tried to use a forklift to turn over the presidential vehicle while Trump was inside it. The forklift got stuck before he could get to the president's motorcade, and Langang was apprehended after fleeing. In the fall of 2018, William Clyde Allen III attempted to kill President Trump by mailing him letters containing ground castor seeds, which contain the biotoxin ricin. Another would-be assassin, Canadian Pascal Ferrier, mailed a ricin-loaded letter to President Trump in 2020. On both occasions, the envelopes were intercepted by authorities before Trump could handle them. In July 2024, Trump was on stage during a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, when gunshots suddenly rang out.
Take a look at what happened.
Trump grabbed at his bleeding ear, apparently struck by a projectile, and slowly fell to the ground as members of his Secret Service protective detail rushed the stage. Law enforcement opened fire toward the source of the attack, while Secret Service agents quickly moved Trump to an armored vehicle. Trump was immediately declared to be okay after the shooting. According to the Associated Press, Secret Service agents killed the assailant, found on the roof of a building more than 140 yards away from the rally site. In addition to the alleged gunman, 1 rally attendee was also killed.
Look, man, like I said before, every step you take, somebody's trying to take you out. Don't matter what side you over there voting for, they trying to take your president out. All right. It's pretty crazy, man, because, you know, if you really think about this, like how far back they went, and it's never going to stop. I'm just wondering, in today's age with like social media and everything, like what's going to happen next as far as for I just want to know if they're going to change any outdoor speaking, or is everything going to be inside? That's my question. 'Cause yeah, like I said, that's not going to be the last attempt on anybody. You already know it's going to, that's why I said when Biden get up there and talk, if he's outside, boy, that security better be tight. When I say tight, I mean like, yeah. If it's me, I ain't talking outside. All right. Appreciate you guys coming over and watching, man. Peace out.